Hi everyone! Today I will be teaching you how to do cutout tapestries. These are pretty much any tapestry that is not your standard rectangle or square. So for example, a circle. This is the tapestry I will be kind of showing you how to make. I will include a free graph to this tapestry in the description below if you want to make one along with me. You can use this method to create unique designs, pillows, appliques, etc. The world is your oyster. And it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. So without further ado, here are some disclaimers. This is not a tutorial on how to carry your yarn, color change, or design a graph. But if you want to learn how I design my graph using Procreate and the iPad, you can check out this tutorial right here where I walk you through the steps I take to design my graphs. So when reading a cutout tapestry graph, you may notice different symbols on the chart. These symbols can be different depending on the designer, but they essentially follow the same rules. So in my example, I'm using a capital I to indicate an increase and a capital D to indicate a decrease. If the chart you're using does not have these symbols, I'll also show you the basic rules on how to start and end your rows depending on the shape of the graph. So this is the graph I will be using in Stitchfiddle. Again, I'll have this free graph link below if you would like to make your own. First, I will walk you through how to follow any cutout tapestry crochet graph, and then I'll walk you through a few of the rows of my own graph. Please feel free to crochet along, we can be twins. Notice how this graph does not have any symbols indicating what stitch to do at the edges of my graph. So I'll walk you through how to add those in so that you can customize your own graphs and make them easier to read. So anywhere there's white or absence of a color indicates there's no stitch or absence of a stitch. This graph includes only the shape of the yin-yang, so only the circular part and not any of the surrounding white areas. So I'll show you how to add the symbols to a graph to make it easier for you to read. You can use whatever symbols you would like that make sense to you. I'm going to be using I for increase, D for decrease, an O for a chain, F for a foundation single crochet, R for where to reattach the yarn, and an X for an absence of stitches, or where to stop the row. So anywhere we have a row that requires an increase of 1 or 2, I will put the symbol I however many times we need to increase. So as you can see here, I have 1 increase, and so I put 1 I. And here we have 2 increases, so I will put 2 I's. The same goes for the decreases. Anywhere we have a row that requires a decrease, I'll put the symbol D depending on how many times we need to decrease. So as you can see here, we only have 1 decrease, so I will put 1 letter D. And then here we have 2 decreases, and so I will put 2 letter D's. If we end up having more than 2 increases or decreases, we're not going to do the standard increase and decrease method. I'll show you what to do for more than 2 increases or decreases. So the I and the D symbols only apply if you have 1 or 2 increases or decreases. When we have greater than 3 increases, we need to consider if we're on an even row or an odd row. Odd rows are worked from right to left with the right side of the work facing you. Even rows are worked from left to right with the wrong side of the work facing you. For row 2 of my graph, we're starting on the left side of the graph and we have an increase of 3. Because we have this increase at the beginning of the row, we will need to chain 3 before starting row 2. I will put my chain symbol below row 2 to indicate we need to add chains before starting row 2. For row 2, we also have an increase of 3 at the end of the row, so we need to add 3 foundation single crochets. I will put the symbol F to indicate we need 3 foundation single crochets. For row 45, we go from right to left and we have a decrease of 3 at the beginning of the row, which means we need to detach our yarn and reattach it at the 4th stitch in the row. I will put X's to symbolize the absence of stitches in this row and an R to indicate where we need to reattach our yarn. At the end of row 45, we simply fasten off and we have 3 stitches left. I know that adding the symbols may seem confusing now, so feel free to come back to this part of the video after you see how the increases and decreases are worked, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense to you. So now that we know how to add symbols to our graph, I will show you the basic rules for increasing and decreasing. First, we'll start with increasing. Whenever a row has more stitches than the row below it, we need to either make increases or create foundation stitches in order to extend it. If the stitch count for the row is only 1 or 2 greater than the row below it, we can do normal increases using the first and last stitches of the rows. If the stitch count for the row is greater than 3 for the row below it, we will do foundation crochet or add chains. First, I will show you how to increase when the row count is only 1 or 2 greater than the row below it. Where we do our increases depends on if we're at the beginning or the end of the row. When we are at the beginning of the row, we use the first stitches to do our increases. If the increase is only 1, we increase just in the first stitch. If the increase is 2, we use the first 2 stitches to do our increases. When we're at the end of the row, we use the last stitches to do our increases. So if the increase is only 1, we increase just in the last stitch, but if the increase is 2, we increase in the last 2 stitches. Now let's talk about if we have an increase greater than 2, as I do in the second row of this graph. When the increases are at the beginning of the row, we need to add chains in the row before it. So we will make a chain in the row before our increases that is the number of increases plus 1 for a turning chain. Then we will crochet back into the chain to start the next row. Now you can see that I increased 3 from the row below. When we are at the end of the row, we will do foundation single crochets to add our increases. So the number of foundation single crochets that we do depends on how many increases we need. So here I only need to increase by 3, so I will do 3 foundation single crochets. To do a foundation single crochet, insert your hook into the turning chain from the previous row and pull up a loop. So you should have 2 loops on the hook. Then yarn over and pull through just the first loop on the hook. This creates our chain row. Then yarn over and pull through both loops to finish our single crochet. To make your next foundation crochet, insert your hook into the chain from the previous foundation single crochet, making sure to go through both legs. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Repeat this step for however many stitches you need with a turning chain at the end of the row. So now you know how to increase by a number more than 2 if you're at the beginning or the end of the row. Next, we will talk about decreasing. Similarly, when a row is shorter than the row below it, we need to either make decreases or fasten off and reattach our yarn. If the stitch count for the row is only 1 or 2 less than the row below it, we can do normal decreases using the first and last stitches in the row. But if the stitch count for the row requires a decrease of 3 or more, we will fasten off our yarn and reattach it, or simply just stop crocheting when we get to that point. So first I'll show you how to decrease when the row count is only 1 or 2 less than the previous row. If we're at the beginning of the row, we'll use the first stitches to do our decreases. So if the decrease is only 1, we decrease just using the first 2 stitches. If the decrease is 2, we decrease using the first 4 stitches. When we're at the end of the row, we do the same thing, just using the last stitches to do our decreases. So if the decrease is only 1, we decrease using just the last 2 stitches. But if the decrease is 2, we decrease 2 using the last 4 stitches. So now let's talk if we have a decrease greater than 3. If we're at the beginning of the row, we'll need to fasten off and reattach our yarn to the stitch where the next row begins. For example, here I will reattach my yarn in the 4th stitch because we aren't using the first 3 stitches, and then when I do that, I make sure that I also single crochet into that stitch as well after attaching my yarn. When we're at the end of the row, we simply stop crocheting when we get to our decrease. Chain 1, turn, and continue on to the next row. Now let's talk a little bit about changing color while increasing and decreasing. So my graph's a bit more complicated as there are sections where I'm changing color during my increases or decreases. For example, in row 2, I have a color change on the chain. So to do a color change on the chain, you will chain 1 less than the total number of stitches required in that color. Then change colors in the next one. Here, I will only chain 1 in purple and then I'll switch to orange because I need 2 chains in purple. And when I do the color change, I will be adding another chain in purple. So chain 1, switch to the next color, and then you can see after we complete our color change, we produce the last stitch in the first color we needed. So for color changing in the chain, just always do 1 less chain than is required before switching colors. Other times, you might have a chart where you need to do 1/2 of the increases or decreases in one color and the other half in the second color. Just pay attention to the color changes and count your stitches after each row to make sure you have the correct number of each color. When following a cutout graph, sometimes it can be confusing to know which color you need to put where. Just because I place the increase symbol in 2 purple stitches on the graph doesn't mean both increases will be purple. Always make sure you're following how many stitches in each color you need to determine what color to make your increases in. I always like to finish off my cutout tapestries by doing a single crochet border around in every stitch to even out the edges. If you plan to use your piece as a wall hanging, give it a good block and consider adding a felt or cardboard backing to help the piece lay straight. There you have it! Look at you, now you made a super cool crochet cutout tapestry. Now you can go and make all the super cool tapestries your heart desires. If you want, you can go check out this tutorial where I show you how to turn a crochet tapestry graph into any wearable you want. Let me know if there are any other tutorials you want from me. I really hope that this tutorial was easy to understand. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below and I will do my absolute best to get back to you. If you want, you can follow me on my other socials. It's at Viney_Maple, which is the same way it's spelled here. I will see you over there and I will see you in my next one. Bye!